Welcome, everyone, to the Lighter Mind podcast. In the Lighter Mind, we explore spirituality, personal growth, trauma, recovery, and the path to wholeness. The Lighter Mind podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any forms of mental illness. We are not licensed therapists unless otherwise noted, and these are experiential conversations. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lighter Mind podcast. My name is Kyle. I'm here with Alan, Cro, and then we have a special guest again, McRae. All right, so we got some shit we got to talk about today. We've been working through Claim Your Power. There's some issues that need to be concerned. Or that have to be discussed in here. They're concerning issues. All right. I wanted to check in with y'all and see. First of all, McRae and I were talking. I know that you were interested in hearing Alan's perspective on what he got out of this book the first time, and what it gave to him. So, Alan, could you fill us in on that?
Love to.
Go for it.
So this is time 2 for me. The first time was kind of when I first started on this journey of trying to heal. So let me give you a little background before that. So I've had, back issues my whole life until this injury that paralyzed my leg. But I would have just agonizing knots everywhere on my back, right? So I read this book called The Mind Body Back Pain Thing by Dr. John Sarno. And he was talking about how we have unacknowledged, that he called them reservoirs of rage, that your brain is like, you need to deal with this shit, this trauma, whatever it is. And if you don't, I'm going to make you aware of this problem somewhere else in your body. Right. So I read the book and kind of got the vibe of it. And I was like, okay, this is interesting, this mind body thing. Right. So then I read another book by another back surgeon who worked under Sarno. And the last half was like, and this is probably where we're going to have some interesting conversation about this Claim Your Power. He was like, put a lot of your stress and stuff you can't really control in God's hand, whatever you want to call it, right? And I remember I was such a devout atheist at that time. And I was like, well, this isn't working, and I went into work and I had an assistant brewer who was Irish Catholic, like very Catholic. And I looked at him and said, man, I'm kind of jealous that you have this faith that you can lean on, because I'm reading this book about how to, take some shit out of your hands, right? And give it over to the universe, whatever you want to call it. And, so I kind of went from being like this, well, I need to figure out some more. And then somehow I ran across Mastin, Kipp, and I said, I'm going to do this book, right? And I hadn't done any trauma work. I knew I had trauma, small t, because it's not like I was buggered by my uncle or anything. But, so I did it. And, Phoebe and I were talking about it, and she's like, it really changed you. I would go in there and go through the trauma stuff and relive, my abandonment issues, my dad just vanishing when I was 13 or 12. And it was very cathartic. And honestly, it was a really, really good experience. This time, very different. So I'm finding like I did the first, the trauma bit and all that trauma from the last time, like abandonment, none of that's there. So then I'm like really like searching, trying to find other things for that, right? And as I worked through the last time, my purpose was learn how to love yourself and show others the peace that comes from it, right? And this time when I've gotten to that point, it's learn how to make connections and show others the joy that comes from it, right? So I kind of had this theory originally that the book is like one of those math equations that always ends up with the same answer. And, it's like a parlor trick. And we were going to be like, all four of us going to be like the exact same thing. And I'm like, oh, it's a ruse. You get the same answer. Everyone gets the same answer. So this time is much different, and it's more challenging, and maybe it's challenging for all of us because we've worked through trauma. So a lot of that stuff just seems like whatever. But I don't know, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm I'm trudging through. Some days I miss a day and then I do two the next day because I'm like, not the it's not an epiphany like the last time. And maybe it's because I'm farther down this road, and I feel more comfortable with who I am, instead of having to build these little walls and have this like, if I'm honest, people are gonna freaking walk away, like now I'm like an open book now. And back then I was like, no, fuck no. No one's gonna, like hear the bullshit that goes on in my head. Now I just tell people, I'm like, they can think I'm crazy. They can think whatever the fuck they want. I don't care anymore, So, like I say, I'll tell people shit and then they just look at me. I'm like, your problem. And walk away, Um, I know Kyle, you were talking about the trauma element, and so was Crow. Crow kind of just unplugged in that part at the start, right?
Yeah, I
So
I think Crow and I unplugged for very different reasons. At least from what I understand. So, Crow, what was your hang up on some stuff?
Well, first off, when I started going through it, I started to go back through. Okay, let me give you a little my backstory, I guess. I'm going on a decade now of this journey of sobriety. July will be my 10th year of sobriety.
Congrats.
I came,
wow,
thank you. I came out of
that's
the
very
gates swinging with these cathartic moments, one after another, Kyle. Um, McRae was a tough road because I had absolutely no idea who I was, where I was in the universe. I was completely upside down. And what was my bliss? What was my purpose? What was the meaning of all of this? I just knew one thing: don't drink, right? And to piece the rest together. But I had one cathartic moment through the halls of AA 3 times a day and the humility that comes with the whole entire experience. And I had a tremendous amount. I was blessed at that time with a tremendous amount of solitude in between meetings. And it was during that time that I started to volunteer for the homeless. Um, through those experiences, that experience, I started to see the reflection of myself along with what I was doing and growing and learning. So I was uncovering so much of my traumas during that time, and so much was just, I wasn't uncovering it, it was uncovering me. And it was really peeling me apart at such a hypersonic speed that I had no idea what it was. I just knew that in the process somewhere was finding who I was through others on the margins at that time. And that, I guess you could say, started to help me re-identify what I did have in my life, despite. So I started to reframe at that time in a different way. I started to come at reframing, I guess, the ego piece of who I am through working with others. And all the while still being confronted constantly by the shadow. It was still uncovering itself and wrestling with all those difficult things. A lot of times alone, a lot of times riding over to Alan's house and saying, "Oh my God, this is what I'm experiencing, and this is what I'm finding," and yada yada. Well, what I did in that process, I realized in hindsight over the years, and then we worked together with at-risk youth, and then from then back into the recovery field, and all the while I started to neutralize those energies. I made sense of them in a whole new way. And what I mean by energies is those dragons, as Campbell calls them, my traumas, and began to forgive much more easily and understand them at a very, very close level. So it I did all that work. You know what I'm saying? And then it came a time, probably 3, 4 years ago, where it's like, hey, it's time to do work on you now, coupling the uncovering of those traumas and the past. Now let's go forward, and let's go forward in life. And who do you see yourself in the future as being? And so then it became more of an exciting journey and fun, full of what I realize now is really self-love and loving myself where I'm at, acceptance, total acceptance of the goofball that I've become in so many ways. And what the quantum world, they would say, you got to be delusional to create the new you moving forward. So there's a bit of my toe in that, right? All the while there is this reconciliation with the past. I started to read Mastin Kipp, and I went, this is putting me backwards. And what, to Alan's point, which was great, because that higher power piece, I came right out of the gate realizing that was what I was missing the entire time, is my childhood relationship with the unseen, the mystery, the God within me. And I've always felt that as a child. And I realized my journey was what I had lost the entire time, was that divine connection. And so that was a homecoming. And I had many visions, many dreams, weird, you call them mystical experiences that proved that put me back into that of, oh my God, I am home with the divine again. And so mine took a much more spiritual path right out of the gate. And then, of course, I was in a monastic community for 7 years, which through that experience was a lot of theology and understanding in a different way, but also a lot of practice based in that. A lot of chanting, a lot of body work, a lot of yoga, meditation. And I worked with my body a lot through all of that. So I already kind of did that. When I came back to Mastin Kipp, when I came to it, I started reading the first 2 weeks and doing it. And then I was going, eh, this is good, but I don't want to go back anymore. I've done that. And to keep redoing it is like, that's old ground. I'm here now. And what I'm, and that's kind of where I was at with it. Love it, respect it. Love Mastin Kipp, a man with his nervous system and all the talks. I love, and I would love to study him. But that's where I had my hang up, is like, No, I'm not going back anymore. I'm fine with all of them, all of my dragons, all my traumas. Um, but what I'm looking for, and this is why I've agreed to continue forward, is those unseen blind spots that keep me snagged in areas of my life that I don't know are there. And that is what I want to find out in a very, very fun, loving way this time, to say, okay, I love Crow, but what are some of the goofy things you've been doing that, unbeknownst to you, are holding you back? So this is why I'm going to press forward in it. Um, but what I found interesting is, after talking to you on the phone last week, I think McRae and Kyle, you two have completely different reasons. And what Alan was talking about is, it's a ruse, and it's almost like this hide and seek game. But I thought for sure you guys' reasons for not having a little issues with it were going to be identical to mine. For the fact that I didn't want to keep going back into the past, like some therapeutic hamster wheel that keeps me stuck in my eternal past of bringing up the past, and I thought you guys would be the same. So now I'm really curious to hear what you guys have issues with.
Well, before you guys start, the weird thing for me was that trauma the first time through, like, it was dead. Like, I couldn't even dredge it up. Like, the abandonment, all that stuff that, like, really kept me back. I was like, they're trying to visualize, 13-year-old me with a father that just disappeared. And I couldn't. Like, it was gone. It was dead, So that to me was like, made me think that the first time through and the place I was at, it was good, a good experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was helpful. And the higher power thing, I went from, in college, I was always agnostic, and I don't know, agnostic. So I don't know if you know who Reverend Jed Schmock is. So he was this he would go to big universities all over the country. He and his wife, Sister Cindy, and he would, like, fire and brimstone shit, right? And people would just sit and heckle him. And I would just stand and observe. And then one day, I'm like, he was sitting having a little lunch on the quad. And I said, I'm going to go talk to him. So I just sat down, and he's an interesting guy. And he goes, so what's your belief? And I said, I'm agnostic. And he goes, well, I got to tell you, God doesn't like people who can't make up their mind. So either become an atheist or a believer. So then I became the atheist, right? I'm like, no, there's no way. I grew up in a kind of, household without that. So this journey now for me, and partly it was because of suspending my disbelief and saying it's possible, right? Like, I talked to my nephew once, and he's like, do you believe in God? And I said, I don't know what I believe in right now. And he was like, well, you can't. And I said, well, do you believe in the Big Bang? He goes, yeah. And I go, well, what was here before that? How did it get here? And he's like, well, I never thought of that. And I said, well, you could say thing with God, right? How did he get here? Right. So it's this giant unknown. And I think and this is probably from my use of psychedelics over the years, is that this, your ego, like, to be ascendant, right? You need to kill the ego, right? But your ego wants to say, I am God. Nothing is higher than me. There's nothing out there, right? That was always me. Like, when you die, the lights, it's like a light switch turning off. You don't even know nothing, nothing's there. And as I get older and I, talk to Crow in this podcast and see what has happened to some people by having some kind of belief, like Adam V. Hill, like, heroin addict, goes to prison for beating up cops, gets out and then puts his faith in something more than him. And now, like, yeah, his fucking just,
Transformation.
yeah. So I don't, I used to have a real issue with anyone that was like, well, I'll just put it in God's hands. I'm like, yeah, okay, good luck, But I think that it's energy, right? Like, so, it's like saying, yeah, I'm like, Jesus, I want to win the lottery. And he'll be like, well, why don't you buy a ticket first? It's not just going to happen, right? So it's a something. And McRae, you were saying how you're hedging your bets, right? And that's what I always did. I'm like, when I became kind of like, well, maybe there is something beyond us. Maybe there's a whole nother dimension. We don't. It's like, I got Rolf the other day. My lady came back to town. She's retired, and we were talking about different dimensions, like what's going on in this room that we don't know about. Like, I don't know. Could be a fucking whole lot of weird shit, So
Probably.
yeah. So anyhow, we'll go to you guys now, and then we'll.
Okay. Well, McRae and I have been talking about this at work a little bit, and so before I jump into this, if this is helping y'all, don't let us step on your wiener. All right? Don't I'm a big advocate for that. Everyone's healing journey looks different. I also want to say that everything that I'm about to say is not personal towards you, Alan. Okay? This is like, I have subjective and objective opinions about Mastin Kipp and the way that he approached this work. I have some biases that I'm working through. I have my own kind of inner resistance and stuff. And I also have as someone in the mental health field who works with therapists on a regular basis and who has been doing trauma therapy for 10 years, I have some educated opinions about some of the things that I think he is doing wrong with this. And I think some of the stuff that he's actually doing, I think could potentially do more harm than good to certain populations of people, or especially for people that are in early addiction recovery. So there's a section in the first, I think it was like day 6 or 8 or something like that. And what he wants to do, once you get past all of the Mastin Kipp verbiage that he uses, what he's telling you to do is to sit down and write down your originating traumas. Okay? I disagree with this section greatly, because I think that, so I tried to step back, and because when I was sitting down and doing this particular section, I have been doing trauma therapy, and I have healed like a pretty significant amount, and so I was still kind of activated, and I had to pick at it, and I was like, okay, like, I've done all of this work, why am I activated with this? And I started to realize that I was viewing it through the lens of someone who is in early recovery. Okay, so someone who has 1 to 2 months, they don't have a good support system, they don't have good emotional regularity, they're still struggling with like embracing discomfort, like all these kinds of things that that all of us struggle with in early recovery. And if you were to ask someone in their first like 2 months of recovery to go sit down and jump into this exposure therapy that he was essentially asking us to do, it would potentially trigger a relapse. And I have a giant problem because a lot of the research and a lot of the stuff that I'm learning and just from talking to my peers and stuff like that, the exposure therapy approach that he takes to this has the tendency to re-traumatize you. And for someone in recovery, one of the reasons, if not the biggest reason that we use and that we drink is to escape discomfort. So escape uncomfortable emotions, run away from trauma, run away from responsibilities, like all these kinds of things. And so I'm looking at that section where he was almost so nonchalant about it and so almost kind of ignorant in his approach that I did that section when I was on vacation, and I had like an imaginary fight with him because I had like such a problem just seeing like the damage that something like that could have done to someone. And I had a really difficult time getting past that. And I looked into like his credentials and I looked up like all this kind of stuff. Like he's a life coach. So he has no formal education around trauma work and how to deal with that. And from what I can tell through his personal experiences with trauma that he shared about in the book, is that he almost got in trouble for being high on cocaine one night, and then what was the other one? His mom almost died when he was younger. And so those are like the little T kind of traumas, but he was failing to recognize that there are people out there who have that big T trauma that can ruin your fucking life if you have to sit down and start journaling about it. But the other thing that kind of pissed me off about it is that I went through and I read this section a couple of times, and his solution to dealing with that was to tell yourself that you're safe, say a positive affirmation, and then say a prayer, which is about the dumbest fucking thing that I've ever heard, like to like approach some of these kinds of things. And so I had a problem with that. I still have a problem with that. And so I got past that section and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep digging into this. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then it started to get very preachy. And I have my own personal biases against organized religion. I have no problem with higher power, with God, with like my spiritual practice, but I have almost felt like this entire time I have been talking to like a youth pastor, like a motivational youth pastor who was trying to sell me some type of product. And I, and that like, that's clearly like, that's my own shit. That's my own bias around it. But um, and a lot of this work, kind of like Cro was saying, like I've done a lot of this work, like if not all of this, and like realistically I just I wouldn't approach it this way. Like I just think
Well,
that
can I step in?
yeah.
So I don't think that his target audience is people in recovery. I
Yes.
think it's kind of like me. Like I didn't really. I mean, my trauma is all pretty small T. Dad leaving, blah blah blah. I never got addicted to drugs. I never. I mean, I drank, but I drank to make other people interesting. Because they fucking bored the shit out of me when I would go hang out. So I think that your experience being in recovery, I don't think that honestly that you're the target audience of this book. I think this is like the middle of the bell curve kind of audience. And it was helpful for me because as far as my trauma goes, I'm middle of the bell curve, like nothing I did other than being just generally stupid was life threatening, right? Like it wasn't I got fat because my coping mechanism was eating, right? So maybe that is life threatening, but I'll be like 90 when it finally catches up to me, right? So I understand, and I didn't take any of that personally because, you know, different things work for different people, right? You know, like talk therapy, fucking stupid as shit in my mind. I'm like, what a fucking waste of time. I'm gonna go sit on a fucking couch and look at some lady that's taking notes like, oh, well, you've got a, whatever complex, and we're gonna have to just work through it. Nah, that shit doesn't work for me. Maybe it does for you,
Yeah.
but so so for me the first time it was very good, right? And the preachy part I get, but I suspended my biases to work through it. I said I'm just going to go with the flow, right? Like my ego says fuck this guy, right? I don't need to do this shit, but I'm just going to see what it does, right? Like I'm not going to have any preconceived notions. I'm just going to work it and see what happens. And it was good, right?
Yeah.
This time,
Well, it sounds like you really had like I will say that past my own shit, there is work in here that I think is necessary in order to grow as a human. So there is, I mean, trauma work I think is very, very valuable for everyone, but I just, going back, I just wouldn't do it this way. But also, there's stuff where he gets into breaking scarcity mindset. He gets into a little bit of inner child stuff. He gets into like taking responsibility. Like, it's all stuff that is relevant to the process of becoming like a well-adjusted human being. It's, I don't know. I just have, um, the other thing that I was thinking about, the other thing that I want to clarify to you guys and everyone who's listening to this, I am in no way trying to discredit the difference between the big T traumas and the low T traumas because the way that we respond to them is the same. Okay. And so like I am in no way trying to discredit that. I think what I'm really trying to say is that we should approach these topics with the support that you need to be able to like adequately kind of work through some of this kind of stuff. And, luckily, like, I mean, I told McRae this at work the other day, and he fact checked my story, and we Googled to see like the recovery books that come up on Google, and this was not one of them. Okay, which made me feel better because I was like, holy shit, like this could be doing some damage to some people out there. And so I do agree with what you were saying, Alan, that this isn't like, I don't think people in early recovery are the target audience. But I do think that like, if you haven't had exposure to looking at yourself and being curious, doing some of this work is necessary. I absolutely think it is, because I think that we really have to start examining how we're showing up in our relationships, like any type of misperceptions that we have, like all those kinds of things, the stories, the expectations, the way that we try to control shit, like it's good stuff. And then especially the trauma, like I try to tell all my clients, like, you need to work on your fucking trauma, like you need to start going back and untethering and doing all this kind of stuff, because it's one of the reasons that you're getting high in the first place. And so I don't know, I wanted to pass it over to you, McRae. So you have thoughts on this. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, and I don't know why I'm surprised that we all have 4 different takes on this, which is great. So, since being exposed to Kipp, my life is full of abundance. No, I'm just kidding. I just. So when I first looked at it, I have to admit I flinched. When I saw the language, this is initially, it made me like grab my wallet and make sure it was where it should be. And I just judged him immediately. And so, as I went on and we started the process, um, I was talking to Kyle at work about it, and Kyle kept saying, "Hey, I'm just trying to put aside my shit and do it. And because there's stuff there that we can benefit from." And, you can't argue with that. So, that pissed me off. And so, it didn't really, but I kept thinking about it. And this is what I came to. Uh, I want to make sure I word it well so it makes sense, because it's hard enough for me to make sense in my own head. Um, when I'm looking at that, it's asking me to look at things, and of course I can find all kinds of stuff in any questions like that. My stuck points. I love that he trademarked original trauma.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think that was the first one I went, you got to be fucking kidding. Wow. Okay. But but forgetting that, and Kim Kardashian's, backing him, but just looking at the stuff itself, I kept thinking, why is this bothering me so much? And I thought, do you have stuff that you haven't looked at? And I don't think that's the case. But then I realized, so for me, this is the situation, and then I'll shut up. But when I think of things like initially, I think everybody said it, at some point, I've looked at my life and I've looked at things in it, and, how I reacted, and, traumas, big T or little t, and just looked and taken inventory of all of that stuff. And all of that stuff created for me what I felt like at the time was kind of my identity, who I was, how I interact in the world, is partially because of my past. And, those are the experiences I have to recognize when I'm going forward. But at this point in my life, I feel like a lot of that stuff, especially like I said, that I felt like this is the person I am, that is ego stuff. That's stuff where you have your identity, your story, the story of who you are and your likes and dislikes and all that stuff. And so if I call that the self, just to have a word for it, a lot of that isn't factual. The story and the image of self I have is not who you see. So they're different. And so it's an illusion. And so I really, if I'm upset about something, I ask myself, who's upset about that? And and why the reason I do that is so that I can move myself out of the center of it and see that that's my ego reacting. Those are automatic thoughts and just shit that's in my brain. Because my body and my brain aren't separate. I mean, it's one thing. And so it's just the framing and how he's coming about looking at it is something I did just a very long time ago. And I don't, it's not that I don't want to look at something. I don't even think it's there. So the problem itself is an illusion. And I know that that's could sound very weak and something that you can't argue. And that's why this discussion, and Kyle and I talked about this a little bit, is very hard, because let's say if y'all are talking to me and you're listening to my perspective on it, you can critique it and be like, dude, your logic is all fucked up. And it helps me. It's not hurting me in any way. But let's say that I was new to looking at this, and maybe I went to my childhood religion. Maybe I had a born again kind of experience, which is very powerful. Um, and y'all start critiquing that, then it's different because I didn't come to that with logic. I came to that with faith. And so when someone is poking a hole at that, they're poking a hole at something very intimate and special. And so I'm always, I'm always hesitant in these conversations, because I don't want to poke anyone who is having a faith-based experience because they're extremely powerful.
Mhm.
And in early sobriety, I didn't know anything else. I was 20 and I wasn't raised in a church. And so I started looking at the things that I knew. And for years, I looked at Christianity. I looked at everything. I mean, I got baptized as an adult, as a conscious choice, trying to have some kind of relationship with a God or a higher power. But I just don't have that anymore. I don't, that's not my belief system. And it's okay for anybody to have that. But it's not that I don't believe that that's there. I- Like Alan said, and really put it well, was that I don't know. I have no clue what it is. The only thing I have and the only thing I kept from early on because of some old timer in AA, he looked at me and said, just be honest with yourself. That's it. Just be honest. God can handle that. And so I've always been honest with myself about my relationship to any higher power. And I have no clue what's there. I only know what I can experience and what I can test. And I feel like I've done that
Mhm.
for like 40 years. I mean, it's the only thing that's interesting to me is that it's my conscious experience of the world and me in it and my relationships and all of those things. But Mastin is just so far away from that to me, for me, and the way I see the world and the way I'm interacting with it right now. Um, that all I can see is his commercial drive and his stuff in it. And it's not that I think he's bad. It's that, if I read something, it's an investment. It's an investment of my attention and my time. And so I opted out after a week or so. I just was like, I just can't do this. Um, I, it's like, um, but the only reason I was hesitant to drop out was I was scared that, not scared, but I was concerned because Alan had introduced it, and I didn't want to come off as I was being disrespectful to your sensibilities of something. And I said to Kyle, I bet he had an early experience that was really good. I've read a lot of books early on that were very powerful to me, but I would never tell someone else to read it. Or, I mean, no, that's not true. It's just other people would have this reaction to it. I don't
Yeah,
know if
well,
that
I
makes
really do
sense.
think that it was an early experience. And other Chris that lives in Spain, I think he's on his third time through it, and it was the first time was uh, at the same time I did it, and it was like kind of life changing. But I think it's like just the tip. Like if you have never done any self work, it's a good starting place, right? Like, because it really opened the doors for me going down that road. And honestly, I read, and Chris recommended this, or Crow, sorry, Crow, um, his most recent book, the Reclaim Your Nervous System, and I fucking hated it. I mean, I read the whole thing, but I'm like, nope, 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 nope. So, um, so I think different things speak to different people. I thought this would be an interesting uh project to see how people who've been down the path react to it and if they get anything from it. And so that's why I was like, let's just, when Cro said he stopped, I'm like, fuck it, I'm just pushing through to the end so I can actually, it's like going to a movie, watching the first 15 minutes and being like, fuck, I'm going to write a review of this movie. This new Star Wars movie sucks dog ass. Well, did you watch it? No, I didn't watch it, but I got the basic idea and I know what the story is. So fuck them, right? So I kind of like, I'm pushing through and I'm going to get it done. It sucks. And luckily, I have the access to the audio version. So I can just, on his website, so I can just sit there and listen to it and then do my little journal instead of sitting in bed and turning pages. So it's quick, right? It's 10 minutes a day, maybe. So I've got that much time to dedicate to this and come with a final autopsy of the second round, right? And
It's what you needed
at the time, yeah,
at the time of your life. It's what you needed. I think you were the target, and you mentioned that bell curve, and I think that you were the target for it because you weren't, as Kyle and McRae mentioned, you weren't in addiction and really struggling with any of those things um, that we've gone through. And here's the other what I find interesting about this, really fascinating. Kyle, you read it through the lens of a somebody that we work with in our field. I did not. I did not even once think about, is this good material that I can run to work with? And to people, I didn't think of it that way. I took a selfish approach and I said, what can Cro get out of this? And how is it going to help Cro that in turn I will show up in front of therapeutic environments in a better way? But I started to go through it and I started to go, sounds like me 10 years ago. If you'd have handed me this book 10 years ago in conjunction with the AA 3 times a day, clinging to one organization that I knew at that worked for me, clinging to that community in conjunction with other books at that time, it would have spoke to me. But I just took another path in life, as McRae said, and my conscious experience developed through and piecing and repiecing and refinding and recognizing by myself in I guess in this same way that he's talking about, but it came piece by piece by piece through different avenues in my life at that time. I almost wish that I would have seen this book. That would have been tremendous 10 years ago for me, in conjunction with the other things, with the people and the support, Kyle, as you were talking about, with the therapeutic support and the community. But I couldn't have done what you did sitting there alone. I would have really struggled. And there's something else too that you guys made me think of is, if I don't, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And this almost like guilt of, why am I not subscribing to this? There must be something wrong with me. Which is kind of the fallout, Kyle, of what you were talking about. Is it could be dangerous and it can be too much, like exposure therapy, but at the same time, whoever's reading it in early recovery might take the subconscious angle of, I gotta do this or else I'm fucked up, even worse than I thought, because I can't get through it. So I can understand that, and I can understand all these angles, and to that religious piece and that to differentiate that and the spiritual path. That was incredibly important, and it still is incredibly important to me. And through the course of my path, I also learned and Alan, we've you've heard my heart on this. I moved from a religious experience that was very, very powerful, as you had talked about, McRae, very powerful and still is, but it moved more from the religious aspect to the spiritual, which is now, and I think McRae, you spoke to this, that conscious awareness of the experiential moment and the realization I am God. God is within. So it's unlimited. And now we're opening a whole different ballpark of unlimited potential. And maybe it's also my age that, Alan, like you, we get to a point where you just don't give a fuck. As Carl Jung says, there's some problems we'll never understand. We just have to outgrow them. And that, I think, is so much truth and is applying really hard and heavy now at this point. Now, I know in our lives both, where it's okay to be me for all the goofy little flaws and imperfections. We'll work with those, but I'm not going to be guilted into, digging back into that useless fodder kind of thing. So I can understand that. But I do like the fact that we're distracting a pattern out of this conversation. There is a target audience, and let's be careful of, to our listeners, are you prepared for his approach? So plain and simple. I think.
I've got a question. Alan, did you say you're dealing with the chronic pain? Who was the book that you mentioned? Was it Howard Schubiner? I can't remember.
No. So the first doctor was John Sarno. He was a back surgeon in NYU Hospital, maybe. And then the second one, I can't remember, the one that was one of his acolytes. And now I've got a book upstairs that I started, but it's got a journaling part that was written by a nurse that worked with Sarno, and it's based in Spain. Chris told me about it. That it's all mind body, stuff like dealing with unresolved emotions. But I can't remember the second book, and it wasn't as good. I mean, he basically restated Sarno's ideas and then added the God bit, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to read it because I had gotten to a point where I was getting more open to something beyond just existence, right? And I think going back to the claim your power thing, I think at that point in my life, I was like, is this all there is? Right. Like I had this job that I was good at, but there was no like challenge in life. There was no like excitement. Right. So I was hoping that would open some new doors to different experience and see what had happened in my childhood or along the way that kept me from opening those doors, kind of. And this path has been, when Cro moved back, he was in the depths of his drinking, and so we kind of were on the same path at the same time. I mean, mine wasn't having to get sober, but it was having to find more of something that made me feel alive, right? And I think that's what this book did, because I didn't love myself. I've said this repeatedly on this podcast. I couldn't look in the mirror and say, I love you. I could not do it. And by the time I finished that book, I could do it. And I was like, all right, well, this is a good thing, right? This has healed something. And so I got value out of that. And then I do feel like the level of peacefulness in my body became very much higher. Like my rage, my anger, my wanting to freaking kill everybody because they drive like shit or whatever was gone. Like I'm like, So there was some value to the whole process because I came out of it, A, actually loving myself, and B, being much calmer. And at the same time, I was reading Marcus Aurelius too. They kind of wove together. Like the Stoicism helped me with some of the process, right? Like letting go of a lot of things I couldn't control, letting go of the past. So it was kind of a multifaceted um, change that really changed the uh, trajectory of my life. Like, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you recaptured your rapture in that.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you got the point that Mastin's trying to get across, which is finding that purpose. Which I
Right.
think is something which is directly out of, Joseph Campbell's paradigm. I mean, that's follow your bliss, like create a life that's full of meaning, like, and I think that along my path, I started to recognize that I was the one that was in my own way. Like I was the one that was preventing me from getting to that point of showing up authentically and having a life that like I actually gave a shit about. And it sounds like
Hmm.
it did give you that. And that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So I was gonna. I don't want to keep shifting things, but so a lot of people come in, to see us because they have opiate addictions because of chronic pain, and so I became interested in chronic pain. And um, there is he's actually just a social worker, but he worked under somebody, and I'm wondering if it's not your person. But he has a book called The Way Out. It's Alan Gordon, but it's pain reprocessing therapy because a lot of chronic pain is a neural loop and there is a fear response in it. I mean, his stuff has nothing to do with any kind of spirituality or anything like that, but you can end chronic pain by breaking that neural loop, just like you can um, if I'm thinking that something that happened to me as a child is affecting me today, the only thing that's affecting me today is my relationship to that thought. It's just a thought. It's not
Hmm.
real. It's not there anymore. So you can look at it and argue, yeah, that's in the past. It's not here. But you can also just recognize it's not here. It really is my thoughts about it. So if you can, or if I can recognize how I'm thinking about something, and as long as I'm acknowledging it's a thought and not identifying with that incident and feeling it and reliving it because I'm thinking about it and identifying with it, then I can drop that in seconds. Now, that's theoretically, but if I'm on the road and you pull out in front of me and I give you the finger and you give me the finger, it's going to take me longer than a second to drop out of that because all of a sudden my body's in it and I'm in it. But I'm better. But I believe they're all the same thing. The chronic pain, the reaction that lasts over a few seconds, or people's in much more serious situations or more terrible situations. For me, it seems to always come back to my relationship to the thought.
Hmm.
And that can sound cold to people because I think most people, including myself early on, want something bigger, warm, and fuzzy to hold on to. But personally, and this has to do with the book, my personal experience with this is that once I let go of needing that, like a warm fuzzy guide that would be with me, an individual, when I let go of that, um I actually experienced more of a warm, fuzzy feeling to the whole everything. It was completely counterintuitive, um, because that was risky to me to let go of trying to find a thing that I could turn things over to and reconceptualize it completely as just accepting everything that's in front of my face right now. If I do that, then I have that warm feeling I was really seeking. Um, I don't
And
know if that.
so, McRae, that almost sounds very Eastern in its approach, because we don't want the alcohol, we don't want the opioids, we want how they're going to make us feel. So what we're craving and what we have the disturbed relationship with is the sensation that we're going to get from it. So that could even be the negative looping of my traumatic thinking or my negative thinking. And it, if I'm not fully aware, the negative thought will creep in, and then I will identify with it because it feels like home. It feels like familiarity. I don't like it. It's not good for me, but it's familiar. That registers to my nervous system as, hey, we're home. So now I've got control. Even if it's negative and it's not serving me, I'm still going to feel at home. And so what in reference to what I liked is that we're changing the relationship to it and
Yeah.
disempowering the sensation first before the thing of the thing of the thing.
Well,
And
or it can be more direct than even that. It's just as long as you recognize a thought is just a thought, then I'm not
yeah,
identified with it, and it's
yeah,
that fast. There's no
you're
other
right, right.
thing needed, because
That's
if I don't identify with it, then I don't have any body or neurological reaction. It's a thought, and then I
yeah.
can just focus on what's happening right now,
Hmm.
which is the only reality we have. And I mean, if somebody's new, I would encourage them to just try to be present for a minute out of the day more than I would encourage them to start adopting a religion. I mean, I just feel like
Right,
they're
right.
so
Yeah.
different and so. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying there's a direct path. Why not take the direct path instead of a convoluted, guilt filled, political spectrum and all the shit that comes with it, just ruins it. It's like we need a secular church or something. It's just,
Well,
I
now
don't know.
you
There's a lot of baggage with religion. So,
and now what you're throwing in with a religion or it's just an additional thought that
yeah,
is
that's
confusing.
right.
So which is what
That's
we're trying
really
to
right.
eliminate. We're trying to eliminate
That's,
all thoughts and identification with the thought so that we can experience the sensation and the cessation. So that point that you're talking about is equanimity. It's to remain equanimous, the allowing of the in and allowing it to go. And
yes.
that is what everything that is to be gained. And I lean into this word uh, in my groups, um, because that is the ultimate, that is the pinnacle, is to where I know it's a thought and I'm letting the thought, allowing the thought to go, without
Yeah.
any introduction of any other thing, because any other thing that gets in there to, you know, put another layer of film on that mirror of pure reflection would be just a belief. It would have to be a belief, and it wouldn't come from you, it would come from the outside. And that's not your subjective reality. So it
Yeah.
has to be clean. Keep it
I
clean.
love,
It is what it is. Live in the place of awareness before you jump outside and go to the story. There's the experience here. Outside of that, a bigger ring, which is awareness. Outside of that is story. So it is what it is. Most people scream straight to the story of it and then go back and to define the awareness. But if we live in awareness, the middle circle, Now we can have the ability to go either way and say it is what it is, and I'm not telling a story about the experience.
All right. So as someone who is incredibly damaged from a million mountain bike wrecks and physical labor, so when I had a first flare up of some back pain in years last week, and I know for what works for me is I welcome it. I said, "Hey man, why are you here?"
Curious.
You know? And then usually it just goes away, right? But early on, before I read the Sarno book, I mean, my wife would come in the bathroom and find me clinging to the windowsill because I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. There was,
Ugh,
and it was a feedback loop. Like my brain is telling me, if you
that's
move, this
right.
is going to hurt more. This is going to, right? So, I think my relationship with pain is very different because I am pretty broken. Um, but the funny part is I'm getting Rolfed, which is, if you don't know what it is, it's fascia work. So it's pulling your muscles off of your bones, basically.
Pain.
And the lady that does it, she was always amazed. She's like, as hard as I'm working on you, most men cry. And she's like, you don't even flinch. And I said, well, yeah. So I go this week. I'm on the table and she's working me. Oh my fucking God. Like I did flinch twice because it hurt so much. But my Aura Ring thought I was asleep the whole time. My body was so calm during the hour, almost 2 hours of it, that it said, you took a 2 hour nap. And I'm like, how could this thing think that I'm sleeping when she is digging her elbows so deep into my thighs that they're hitting the bone, Um, so that's kind of my relationship with pain is and the pain is not, it's gotten to the point now I live with it and I don't really care about it. It's if I have a flare up and like a knot, like, I had one right on my ribs backside and it was just painful, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm getting the Theragun and I'm just going to dig into that motherfucker until it goes away. Right. And it was agonizing, but it went away. Right. But I welcomed it first. I said, hey buddy, why are you here? You know, my little visitor, what are you trying to, and that's the Sarno thing. Like, okay, there's something you're repressing right now. You've got some emotion or something is bothering you that you're not acknowledging, right? So that's why I ask why you're here. Like, and I didn't really get an answer this time. Sometimes it'll be like, well, this and that, you know, you you feel inadequate or whatever is going on,
So you attach an emotional thing that's going on that has to do with the pain.
Generally, yeah. I would say that the only time it shows up is, and I can always tell it's coming because I'll start grinding my teeth at night when I'm sleeping. And usually if I start grinding my teeth, I know in a couple days I'm going to have some flare up. And I just think it's some kind of somatic thing. Like my whole body's like something's not in alignment right now. Yeah. And you need to figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, I'm going to make you figure. My brain is like, I'm going to go down into your body and make you address whatever is going on.
So I know, like, if I'm under a lot of stress, I'll get a knot under my shoulder blade. It's just always been like that. So, I'm stressed, so I'm doing something, and that's what'll happen. But with my own pain, I just, I try to be just curious about it, and I'll put my attention on it as it's happening, especially at night, because that tends to be where I'll notice it the most. And as soon as I'm curious about it, not that I'm working out anything or anything's wrong. If I'm curious and I really try to see where do I actually feel this and where does it go? As I start doing that, it's not that the pain goes away, but it does change. I mean, absolutely. It does become different. And somehow that different I can tolerate more. But I've had, I've got half a C1 vertebrae, and I've had a ruptured disc. I'm not even going to talk about injuries, but in all of those, when I went to this neurologist, he was like, "You should be in a lot more pain than you are." He said, "You're lucky," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not a bitch." He was like, he started laughing, and he said, he goes, or, you're type 1 diabetic and it's neuropathy and you just don't have any feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, or that,
That's funny. Yeah, so I think you got to reframe my relationship with it when it happens,
Yeah.
right? And it's infrequent now, like my legs get super tight, and she just basically worked on my lower half for 2 hours, like, and she's like, "My God, you're tight." And she tells me when she gets rolfed by other people, she'll have like this massive emotional, like, start crying as that held back trauma gets pulled out of those muscles and the fascia that I haven't had that experience. I mean, it's kind of trippy almost for me. Like, most experiences I would get done and sit in my car because I felt like I wasn't really in my body or whatever and able to drive. And this week, since she moved to the Western Slope, she's using someone else's studio. So I left and I didn't really know where I was. I mean, I knew where, but I didn't know which. I looked at this road and I'm like, what road is that? And I just sat in the truck until I kind of got my bearings, because I didn't feel like I should be driving at that point, right? Like, yeah, it was really weird because it was like in Nevada and Willamette, but I'm looking and I'm in this parking lot. I'm like, what street is that? What street is that? And I'm like, which way do I go when I leave this parking lot? Yeah.
So, Alan, not to blow up your spot, but you were talking about doing some of the craniosacral stuff.
Yeah. So I'm gonna I thought she recommended the guy you went to, but it's some woman that's in this building that where I went. And I kind of looked her up and I'm like, I don't know if she's, it's a little too hippie, like new agey shit.
So is my
you know.
guy. So
Is he? Yeah.
well,
So I'm gonna try him, and see if I connect. Like my rolfer, I'm connected with, and we were talking, and oh my God, she is so obsessed with Trump and blah blah blah. And I was like, hey man, you were this way 6 years ago, and then and I was just like, here's what you need to think: if you can't control it, don't think about it, because it's all she's just like deranged. And I'm like, who gives a fuck? You can't control what's happening. You can just ignore it. Like, and I was telling her how this little lady that walks by every day was like, I want to put a suicide vest on and go into the White House. And I'm like, and what's that going to change? You're dead. Some other people are dead. The machine rolls on. Be in your life. Be in your life. Don't. But it was. I'm like, oh my God, for someone who does this kind of work, just get over shit. Who fucking cares? Like, nothing beyond this room right now should matter, right? Like,
Yes.
And
that is true.
it was that was kind of, it was just like, well, this is interesting,
So, Alan, the reason that I bring that up is because you were talking about digging into like the literal muscle and then having like that somatic experience through the muscle. The craniosacral stuff deals with some of that energy that is in the organs.
And so if, in your liver, in your stomach, like in your pancreas, like, like all these kinds of things. And I've I had that experience of crying in front of a grown man while he's working on my liver or doing, because there's always like usually the liver process is grief. And so when you start fucking with some of that, you're gonna cry.
Yeah.
It's just one of those kinds of things. And so I'm curious to see what your experience is when you start getting like a very, very focused approach. That is because the Rolfing um will absolutely help with that, but this cranial sacral work there, it's very specifically targeted on, okay, like what kind of energy is in there, and then where does the origination of that, and then like how is this showing up, and it's interesting.
Well, it'll be interesting because I do, I'll lay on the floor and foam roll, and then I'll just start massaging my organs. Like I get so deep under my rib cage in there and just start ripping around. And a lot of times when I hit my liver, it's like painful. So then I just work and work and work. But the first time I started doing like pancreas and all that, and I'm like, you seriously, you just like get so far under the rib cage and just pushing all that shit, And then and I've had intestinal issues for years. Like, I don't know, it's been like fucking 40 years. And now I'm like kind of targeting probiotics, um, breath work, and it's been good. And I make I call them the poop muffins, and they're just 100% fiber, like just straight, so everything's kind of good. But then I'll work, like if I can feel like something's not right, I just get so deep in there. And my Rolfer has done that. Like I'll be like, yeah, my guts don't feel good. And she's like, "Rrr." I'm like, I think she's going to push my intestines out my ass. She's moving so hard, And, so, I'm looking forward to trying the craniosacral, um, and I don't know really what to expect. I mean, to me, it'll be an adventure, whatever. Either I'll learn something about myself, or maybe it won't work for me. I'm guessing it's going to be
Maybe I'll hate
helpful
it.
since, yeah.
You don't know till you try.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
probably
Which
next
is
week.
to bring us full circle, which is kind of exactly what my mindset was with approaching this book, which you don't know till you
Right.
try.
Yeah, and that's why I think I want to keep pushing forward, just to see. The worst thing that can happen, you're gonna like, no, whatever, man. It's like pop psychology, mass market, Oprah Winfrey, freaking.
But to go back to your point, though, it worked really powerfully for you at that time in your life, and it helped you open you.
Right.
And that's what we all need. That's why that's why we're all here. We need that death moment, that cathartic death moment, that ego death. Every adult needs it, whether it's addiction recovery, whether it's just feeling stuck in life. Some people are, millionaires, billionaires, and they just wake up one day and say, what is the meaning of all this? They need it too. Everybody needs it. It doesn't where
Like,
it doesn't matter. Everybody needs their moment of
but how many people do?
reconciling with the self. Well, most people do go to their graves with their song still in their heart.
Right. Well,
So-
like that guy billionaire that was married to or had knocked up Elizabeth Hurley, who jumped off that building, and killed himself. Right. So
But Kyle, to your point, very fascinating stuff, you guys, you and McRae. I did not look at it through that lens. That was fascinating.
Dude, I think I went through January and February going down the rabbit hole with bilateral eye movement stuff. I went through a lot of like neurofeedback stuff. I went through like a lot of like trauma work and dealing with a little bit more shame and dealing with some of my death stuff and like Like I really went in January and February. And so I came out of that with this perspective of like, how can I show up and help others? You know,
Hmm.
and so like I met it from that point of, you know, like, how is this going to help me? And then how is this going to affect how I can help others?
Yes,
And so,
yes.
and it's just because I was already like in that mode, you know? So that, I don't know, that's just like where my head went with it.
Well, I think you need to have a beginner's mind, when you
Yeah.
go into this, right? Like, um, throw away everything from your path, and it might look different, right? It may have no value, really. You may work through it and be like, I got nothing, but it may be there's a incremental shift, right? And we've talked about that 1% off course crossing the ocean instead of England, you're in Africa, right? Um,
Yeah.
so there may be one little tiny kernel that could grow into something valuable. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. For me, it was good. For Spain, Chris, it was good. Um, my answer to most everything anymore is I don't know.
Well, that's kind
I
of where
don't
I've
know.
been leaning towards lately.
Right. Like I think that and I think it's partly the Ellen Langer thing, that mindfulness book that McRae recommended that I loved, that
Good.
certainty is the negation of free will, right? Um, so that's where the I don't know comes into me now, because I don't want there to be certainty. Like I like some certainties, like that I live in a house and have food. I like those certainties. But as far as my soul, for a better word, I want uncertainty, right? I want to be able to make these choices and maybe, you know, ruminate on ideas, and maybe it is a higher power that's speaking to me, I don't know what it is, right? Like I was talking to a guy last night. I said, every night I lay in bed and I'm like, God, whatever you are, like give me some guidance on things. And then like, the next day I wake up, I'm like, this is pretty interesting. So I follow this thing. Like it came to me in my sleep or whatever. Or it was, the universe speaking to me. But there is some kind of value in that to me in this, at this point in my life. Younger, I would have been like, and it's an ego thing. Like I control everything. My destiny is in my hands. And now I realize it's marginally in my hands, right? Like I gotta the tightrope that we talked about last week is there, right? And I can fall off either way very easily into despair, anxiety over the past, the future, whatever. But I think I can lean on myself and some kind of faith that there's something beyond me that supports me, right? And whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, I find that uh, gives me peace.
Yeah. Good.
I
Nice. I
like
like
that,
that.
man.
I like
I
that.
like
McRae's,
I like
I
that.
can see the little smoke from the pencil going there.
I'm so glad that you liked her. I'm so I really love her, having seen her interviews, and this is a lot of her personality too. But she's so direct about things. It just works for me, and the information, there's just no woo woo to it at all. Her and she's talking about the thing that every woo-woo person is trying to espouse to be an expert on.
Right.
And the real expert is just direct and very, and I like that. I like that, that it works like that for her. And, I also was thinking about, you know, if I have, well, that's a different topic. But anyway, I'm glad you liked
No, it was
her.
great. I'm gonna read another one of her books, but I got to clear some stuff out because I got like 20 books. I'm a third of the way through, so and
You said you like that you were doing the audio book. I bought the audio book too for Kipp.
Right.
And I would suggest people. I mean, look, it depends how you are. If you're coming into it as a skeptic and you already have opinions, I would not listen to Kipp talk because it just reinforced bad things for me because I felt like he was like, and
yeah,
you can have it too.
yeah, it's
And
kind of
I just,
annoying. So I didn't buy the audiobook because I did it so long ago. I had that free access to his website where he does a little video first, talking about it, and then he'll do asides in the thing. Like this isn't in the book, um, but his voice is kind of annoying. His demeanor is a little annoying. And with the little video things, I swear to God, every time he goes this, well, hey guys, and I'm like, you sure you aren't on the cocaine? Yeah, like I'm ready. Like, hey, don't roll the camera so soon. Like wait till
let's go.
So I can see how they struggle with it. Really, I don't know. So I'm going to defer to you guys if you want to just review the movie now and say, fuck, this movie sucked, or keep moving forward and do it in another 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks when we're done, when everyone's
We
done.
could always revisit it
Yeah.
and
I think
think
there
of
needs to be
another
time to
one,
process.
time to process, and then review maybe for next week of some more ideas and other material that we tear into, and then
Well,
we think about revisiting.
is anybody doing it other than Alan?
I'm still slogging through it.
Okay.
I do it sporadically. I got hung up on the God stuff and I got hung up on the trauma stuff. Um I've there's been a couple days haven't touched it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
because I was just like, this isn't the way that I want to approach this.
Well,
Um
which is funny too, Kyle, because given my story, what I had just gone through earlier, um, I, I find myself jumping towards the end. Like, where am I? Where am I in my current life
yeah.
journey right now? Which is pretty goddamn good and very,
Yeah.
very open and trusting to this. And I again, maybe it's the age thing, but I'm having a blast. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? I
I
really am enjoying life so much that I'm looking for little tweak improvements of my blind spots. So I find myself jumping towards the end of the book to find me where something relates and speaks to me. But other than that, outside of that, McRae, I'm with you. I haven't kept up with it, but yeah,
I will say that especially like the first couple of days and I'm really starting to I'm less activated now than I was 2 weeks ago when I was going through some of this shit. And maybe I can put my biases aside, maybe I can put my shit aside. Like I I don't know if I can. I don't know if I
Yeah.
can. I don't know if I would necessarily want to. But the first couple of days going through it, like, and I was telling McRae, like, I did have like some realizations about myself. Just like little like, hey, like I didn't realize I was doing this thing, and like I don't necessarily know how I feel about it right now. I don't know.
hmm
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
I
it's
gotta think on it.
process, it's everything's process. It's like, I'll do a beer analogy. It's like, well, I got a bag of barley. Tomorrow it's going to be beer, but without the work, it doesn't become beer. And sometimes it sucks. Like it may make a beer that sucked. Right. So to me, I'm like, I'm just going to do it, see what I get from it this time. And if it's nothing,
Yeah.
only thing I lost is a little bit of time. And I realized that this doesn't work this time.
Yeah,
But
I will say that the thing that I really appreciate about this, and why I've been trying to get your ass on this podcast is because this book brought us together. Like, regardless on like what the fuck we do with this, like I think that to have four men who are working on themselves and who are showing up along this path and have the opportunity to like give back to other people who like
Mm-hmm.
don't know what the fuck the path looks like
Mm-hmm.
that, like that's I'm really grateful and appreciative about like what, just, looking at this screen right now and seeing all four of us, just to, I mean, just to have this moment for us to dig in, regardless of like, what the biases are and what the expectations and whether or not we agree or not. Like, I think we're all on the same fucking team. And so I think that it's like we need more of this kind of stuff. Just
Absolutely.
bunch of dudes sitting around talking about healing and how do we not be shitheads anymore? Like
Yeah. And
that's it.
and how can I take responsibility my best way, given my experience in life, to make sense of it and level up if I'm feeling stuck, and if I'm feeling stuck, and in that case, what are my survival patterns that he points to? What are mine? And I'm finding myself more and more within the last couple of years now already asking myself, what are my little survival patterns? And you notice when I talk about them, I'm saying it with a big smile on my face because that's how I reframe them. I don't look on Crow's survival patterns anymore, and I haven't in years, as something to be ashamed of or guilty of. They're a part of me, and Crow's a goofball. That's his goofy side. And I have, thank God, to your point, Kyle, I have great friends and a close one in Alan that can call me on my stupid, goofy shit
There
when
you
I'm
go.
that way, which is top of my gratitude list all the time. But there is no more shame to be excavated. There is no more deep work to be in that regard to be excavated and tore up and reseeded. Yeah, I need to do some of that work, and I know that, but that's a work in progress, and that's the beauty of life. And but I do like, to your point, Kyle, that at least it brings us all together, and we need
Yeah.
more group, and especially in our culture, and I'm talking the Western world, we need more um, um, uh, places, open environments for men to get together, especially younger guys that
Yeah.
have absolutely no clue and are misguided right now in this culture with being bombarded with food for sheep out there. Um, to keep this, and I love this whole format for that reason. So this is
Hmm.
great. We have
Yeah.
an incredible one at our work right now that one of the facilitators has started, and it's a group that he started, and boy, does it get a group of men together in there every Thursday afternoon. And I've never been in it, but I've heard some tremendous, remarkable things about guys just in there together crying, talking with other men about, you know, without women, without other staff, without anybody, just sharing. And these are the environments we need, man, to move forward. So,
Yeah.
Thinking about what Crow said, I agree with you about places for men and especially young guys. We've got these great, there are all these women and moms that are raising kids and
mm-hmm,
these boys, thank God they've got their mom. And, and
mm-hmm,
listen, this is not an anti female thing at all. I mean, my mom was the consistent always.
Mm-hmm.
But she can't raise me without, I have to have a man involved to raise a man. It's just how it is. So, there are a lot of boys who have not been around men except in some terrible, or unproductive way, where, they're the authority figure and they're getting arrested or in trouble or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's important, like you said, Cro, that these
Absolutely.
boys have some men around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a honesty factor. I read this thing the other day that, if you're a true friend to someone, you can call them out on their bullshit, right? Like most people hear something and just bite your tongue, But I think if you can be like, dude, you're fucking up. You don't see it, but you are, right? Right. And that's my opinion. But usually when I have an opinion about something, it's because I did that. I fucked up. I went bankrupt. All those things that happened in my life. And then took responsibility and everything changed, right? Like everything changed. Like, all right, you were freaking shitting in a bucket because you couldn't afford to get you didn't have your utilities on.
Right.
So you'd shit in a bucket and then bury it, and that was life. And so at the time, no one called me out like, what the fuck are you doing? My mom did. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah, I'm fine, Mom, So I think, being able as men to say to each other, hey, man up, really, like, come on, dude.
To your words, McRae, don't be a bitch.
Yeah.
There's just sometimes in life, I mean, despite all the trauma, the wounds, and yada, yada, there is that point within us where we have to realize that no one's coming to save me.
Yeah.
And
And
how am I going to do this? And, last ditch ever there, I've got to do this. And there's got to be a well, and you got to recognize that well within you. First off, that well has to be developed of that inner sense of autonomy and responsibility. And this is me, man. So anyway.
I have Kyle at work to do that.
Yeah.
I was going, some poor intern walked in and I started hammering on them about this topic I'm looking at on the internet. I'm like, all opinionated. I'm just like, I'm giving her far too much shit than they deserved. And she was like, wow. And she walked out and I was like, and Kyle was like, dude, that's your shit. You just spewed all over her. And I was like, was it bad? And he's like, yeah. And, but that shit's valuable when you've got people that will be like,
well,
hey.
My wife did it to me yesterday. We went to the grocery store, and it was right after the No Kings protest, and all these blue-haired ladies are running around and shit. And I get in the car, in my truck, and it's a big fucking truck, and this lady comes walking up to it, right? And she's like, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck? So immediately I'm like defensive, right? And she's like, excuse me. And I was going to be like, what? Are you pissed that I'm driving a giant fucking truck? And she's like, that thing on your leg, what is it? And I told her, I was like, it's called, it's a German orthotic. It's Autobach. And she's like, well, what's it for? And I said, well, I injured my spine and my leg doesn't work. And then I roll up my window and Phoebe's just like, you were so fucking rude to that lady. She's like, she probably wanted to know what it's called,
maybe for her husband.
Yeah. Or whoever. Right. But
I
immediately put up this wall because all these freaking, no kings, no tyrants, where ladies are running around. And I'm like, oh God, she's going to call me out because I'm like a gas guzzler or whatever,
But it wasn't
and
that.
then the whole way home, I drove like, fuck, I can't believe that. And I almost turned around to go back to the grocery store and find her, apologize, tell her what it does. And then I got home and I just went out, sat in the backyard, and I said, universe, forgive me for being such a fucking dickhead to that little old lady, because she didn't deserve that. It was me assuming things, right? Instead of just rolling down the window.
Yeah.
And having some grace and compassion for this little old lady walking up to me, I immediately went like fucking badger on her, she like looks in the little hole and here comes this monster. So, yeah, it was weird. So same kind of thing, right? Like, it's weird.
That's
you
we got a phone.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, you guys. What are we grateful for?
I'll start with Alan. Grateful for Alan, man. He's always there for me. Always been there for me. I'll tell you later about my Jeep saga that I've been through for the last 2 weeks now, Kyle. You and McRae got to hear this story, but on another time, man. Wild. But anyway, lost the Jeep, and I'm in process of getting a new car. But anyway, through all of that, man, Alan's just been just tremendous help. And I'm grateful today for the weather. It is beautiful out here so far. It's supposed to get all cloudy this afternoon, but I'm grateful for that. And got my son this game on this morning, and beautiful. Been loving the sun in the eyes in the morning. And I'm grateful for my health, despite this little pollen thing that is passing through me. It's trying to take residency, but I'm not letting it. It's just an unwelcome guest. So other than that, man, I'm just aces. That's what I got.
I love it.
Yeah.
McRae, what do you got?
Probably a lot like, I'm glad to be like healthy and whole for sure. Again, I hate to keep repeating it, but I'm really grateful to have new guys to be talking to, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle, this has been really great. I kind of had to shift away from people just moving and doing stuff. And so I was kind of out here alone. And so you guys have been really great for that for me. So I'm really grateful for that.
Likewise.
And that we could talk about this. I was worried about this discussion, and there was no reason.
No. Trust.
Yeah. What do you think, Alan?
So I'm grateful again for this. I didn't know what to expect going into. Our texts have been kind of interesting about it. And, I'm glad that we can have civil discourse and openness to the ideas of others and their perception, beliefs, or whatever. So to me, that's very valuable. And this is to go to the Mastin Kipp, my purpose thing. I'm glad for connection. So last night we had some of our we do these drives in the Porsche with our Porsche friends. And they came over last night, and the guy's a year younger than me. And I just figured, he was retired Air Force, had this great life, right? But it turns out he got kicked out of his house at 15, made it through high school, and has had just like massive bullshit trauma. And I would have had no idea. This guy just like happy like a pig in shit all the time. And I'm like, wow, who would have ever guessed that this is what happened to you? I mean, he joined the Air Force right out of high school, got a bachelor's, got a master's all along the way. Seems like a great life, very positive about things, excited. And without this like wanting more connection, I don't think I would have learned this. It would have been like we would have sat and talked cars the whole time. And, so that
Yeah.
So I'm going to say I'm grateful to this book for that one moment last night where it opened up connection with someone who I have gone on drives with, but never really hung out with, right? Like we meet at someone's house, we go race around the mountains, and then we all go home, right? So that's one thing I'm grateful. So you guys, this, and then I'm grateful for my dogs because I see in them God, right? Right? Like, and I see in them how I'd like to live, in that they're always happy and they feel safe and loved, and they reflect that. You know, they when I see their little smiling faces and wagging tails, and they're looking at God, their God, right? To me, or to them, I'm probably their God. We are like we give them the food, we give them love, we give them safety, comfort. So those are my three things. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I was saying. I am grateful for this. I'm grateful to have a group of dudes, we can show up and have these kinds of talks. And I want to shout you out, McRae, man. I was thinking about you on the way to the gym this morning, and I'm fucking glad that I met you, man. I'm grateful. Like I am grateful to, have someone out here that is like-minded. And I had a similar kind of experience where like I moved out here and I knew no one. Like I have my wife, but that's about it. Like I mean there's meetings and stuff that I went to, but there's no one that I really like hang out with. And so like I'm glad I met you, man. And I'm glad that we can sit and talk bullshit, and you make the days go by quickly at work, So it's good. I am grateful. It's starting to warm up out here a little bit, and I'm very grateful for that. I am so fucking grateful for Savannah, Georgia. It is so pretty here, and I have such a cool experience driving to work, driving to the gym, just going outside and seeing like the water and the boats and the palm trees and these crazy oak trees. It is just like I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to live somewhere like this. And yeah, just to be in a place where like I can actually kind of call home. And yeah.
Right
Okay.
on. Right on.
Yep. All right, you guys. So let's wrap it up. For all the listeners, make sure that you are liking, subscribing, doing all those shit that YouTubers say. And we have a Instagram at the lighter.mind. You can find us on Spotify, Jesus Christ, Apple Podcasts, all those kinds of things. So just make sure that you're tuning in, sharing the podcast, doing those kinds of things. And without that, we'll check you on the next one.